Hi, I'm Catherine Morgan. I'm the founder of Point A to Point B Transitions, Inc. I am a career transition expert and business consultant to consultants.
Hi, I'm Susan Eckstein. I'm a women's empowerment expert, keynote speaker, certified coach and facilitator. And in a nutshell, I help high-achieving women own their personal power so they can stop shrinking and have the confidence to be seen, be heard, and take up space.
Hey, Susan.
Hey, Catherine, how are you?
Well, I am thrilled to be talking to you today about this really important topic. I know that both of us have spent a lot of time working with women and often men, but it shows up a little differently in men. So today I think we'll concentrate on women about the things that hold them back and keep them from naming and claiming what they really want. So let's first set the stage. I think it's kind of like the fish can't explain the water it's swimming in. We have these beliefs and we have these expectations, family of origin stuff, culture stuff. And I think we're so steeped in it, we almost don't know what we're working with. What do you see?
Well, I see a lot of women, and I'll say men, but I mostly work with women, that when they're thinking about how they would like to show up at work or show up in their personal lives, that depending on how they grew up, what they read, who their teachers were, how their parents, the roles that their parents played in their lives, that they come into situations with these preconceived ideas about what a woman's role should look like and how they should be acting in certain situations. So for example, if you grew up hearing that, people don't like a smart woman, a know-it-all, you're more likely to sit in the back or sit around a table and lean back and not actively participate because you don't want to be seen as someone who might be a smarty pants or someone who might be seen as difficult, or who does she think she is? So instead, a lot of women, despite being really creative and really smart and really have a lot of good ideas, are just sitting on the sidelines because they believe or heard growing up that they shouldn't be out in front and be seen and be bold. And that's hardwired in us. And it's automatically just how we interact in the world. And then we don't really see that there might be another way to show up in all of our different relationships and situations.
Yes, and in your family of origin growing up, you may have been, active or the performer or the ideator and been verbally reprimanded or maybe slapped down for sharing your ideas, sharing your contribution, being enthusiastic and vibrant. And you may remember that or you may not, but in your body and the way you interface with the world, it may have been quite adaptive for you to be quiet. If you grew up in a turbulent family, maybe being invisible was really adapted and kept you out of the firing line. Not everybody had a perfect family growing up, so we need to talk about that. And I find with my career transition clients, when we're doing interview question coaching, they get super sticky about talking about what they do and feeling like they're bragging or calling attention to themselves, which, depending on what kind of culture you were raised in or what sort of religious tradition you grew up in, could have been frowned upon. And in many cultures it is. So I have to flip the script on them and say, well, if you don't give people the information they need to come to the conclusion that you're the right candidate, you've done them a disservice. Flip it. So they're not bragging, they're just providing the necessary information to make a yes/no decision. And that seems to calm them down a little bit. What do you see?
one of the things that, and I love this example that you're giving, because I see it a lot, especially in some of the women's networking organizations that I'm a part of, where you'll have a whole bunch of women on a Zoom call. You see all of these little boxes, and it might be a breakfast meeting, you know, just a little meet and greet, and it'll be like, tell us what you do and tell us what your superpower is. And all of these boxes, you see these women just go down, their body language changes, and they get on and they say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I really don't have a superpower. And their voice changes, their body language changes. You can see how uncomfortable they are sharing that they're good at something. And it's an epidemic. Women are embarrassed to proclaim what they're good at. We're all good at something, and yet we hold ourselves back, like what you said. If we grew up in a household that was very turbulent, where it was really frowned upon to say, hey, I aced this test, I did really good. And, you know, your mother or father was saying, stop bragging. Nobody needs to hear about, you know, how you did great on a test. That then you can see that's really translating into how we're showing up in certain situations. And, you know, just in a nice little casual meet and greet, women are shrinking and embarrassed to say that they're good at something.
In front of other women.
Yes.
So it's set up hypothetically as a safe space where women hypothetically are supporting women, and they're still getting that response. So let's take that into the corporate meeting room. How does that translate?
Oh, it's a huge problem. One of the things that I've heard from clients is that, you know, I'll give you an example. I was a guest coach for someone else's group coaching program, and a woman was sharing a story about how this was before COVID. She was sitting around a table, men and women. Her immediate boss was a woman, and the boss's boss was a man. And he turned to this woman and said, you know, this is what I'm thinking about in terms of timeline. This is what we need. And this woman pushed back. She said in a very polite way. And she said, well, I have some problems with your timeline. Let me tell you why. And she just publicly shared, this is why she didn't think, she wanted to basically say that the boss.
Unrealistic, like
exactly.
any software development timeline, you add 6 weeks or 6 months.
Right, and it wasn't going to work. And he accepted her answer and thanked her for being honest. And her boss, who was a woman, said in front of everyone, boy, you came in hot. And she was like, I was being honest, I was being open, I was sharing ideas about how we could make this work and how to manage his expectations and still get the job done. And here her female boss was just cut her down, like just cut her down publicly. And you would think that women would be supporting women, but in certain situations, that is not happening. So I think unless women are willing to say, hey, we want to hear from everybody, this is inclusive, let's talk, let's support each other in allowing our voices to be heard and to be seen as leaders. If we're not doing this for other women, we're going to continue to have this problem where women will be with groups of women and still be apprehensive and nervous about being themselves and sharing what they're good at and sharing their ideas and opinions without fear of being cut down.
Okay, well, I know this isn't going to shock you, but I was often the person who was jumping into the fray and sharing my ideas and suggestions, whether they were asked for or not. I know you're shocked, but I was in corporate situations, sometimes overtly reprimanded in front of the whole group or talked over or shut down. I imagine that's still happening in boardrooms. So we need to acknowledge sometimes there's reasons why this happens. You try it once or you see somebody else, shut down, some bright person with a good idea. Maybe maybe it's not a gender thing. Maybe it's a less experienced worker or a newer worker who just has a different way of looking at it. And they're basically told you don't have enough experience to speak at the table, listen to your elders. Like, this is a big problem.
It is a big problem. And I think that in certain situations or in certain companies, they are recognizing this and they're doing everything that they can to bring new workers into the mix, empowering them more, actually teaching them how to ask for feedback, how to give feedback, how to encourage participation in certain meetings so people are more visible. But that's not happening everywhere. And I think it puts us, especially women, in a difficult position to know, like, is this appropriate for me to, share my opinion, to disagree with my boss in a respectful way in a group situation, and not have it negatively affect me immediately afterwards or down the road,
or in my performance review 6 months later.
Right.
I've had that happen where, all of a sudden the knife comes out, and yeah,
it's a tricky situation. It's a tricky situation.
It is a tricky situation. But let's talk about showing up as yourself and contributing. The authenticity word is, I think it's the equivalent of meatloaf. Like, if you asked for recipes from different people, you get 10 different recipes for meatloaf, or 10 different definitions of what authenticity is. How do you think about authenticity, specifically associated with how we show up at work?
I think of authenticity as fully being able to be yourself and stand in your power without feeling like you have to censor yourself in any way, shape, or form. So I'll give an example. So many years ago, when I started my speaking career, I had been in the fitness industry for a long time, and I was invited to come and speak at a real estate agency about mindset. And being in the fitness industry, I had a lot of workout clothes, but I did not have anything to wear for this talk that I was doing. So I had in my mind, okay, what would it look like? How should I dress so I would be accepted? And I went out and bought this outfit that was not me at all, but in order for me to be accepted, I felt like I had to wear it. And the morning of the talk, I put this outfit on, and I felt really small. I felt very deflated. I was like, this is not me. But it was too late at that point. And I ended up doing the talk, and I did well. But the entire time I was standing up there, I wasn't being myself at all. And I think from an authenticity point of view, in hindsight, I would have gone in there in some black boots. I would have had a leather jacket on. I would have been much more relaxed, and I would have been myself. And the message would have been the same, but I think I would have delivered it in a different way. It would have been received in a different way because I was being myself. And I think in many work situations, we look at the culture, we look at the environment, we look at the dynamics between men and women, between managers and subordinates, and we put ourselves into this box of what we are allowed to do. And while I think it's important that roles are defined, I think it's more important that people are allowed to show up and be themselves, and not feel stifled or shoved into this box where they can't freely express and be themselves. And I think when we're forced to be in a box, we're not as creative, we're not as visible as we could be, we're not empowered, we're not helping others, because others look to us and they say, oh wow, she's, I like her, but you can see she's holding back in certain situations. And
or you might not be able to say what it is, but something's off.
Exactly. Exactly. And I can see that, like on the Zoom calls that I'm on with women, you can see that they're not being authentic, or they're afraid that they're going to be perceived in a negative way. So they don't fully show up as themselves. And that's a shame, because we all should be able to fully show up as ourselves in all of our roles, in all of our
I'm going to add an asterisk here. So I think in the professional version of ourselves, like I think if I were speaking in a corporate thing, I wouldn't be wearing sort of the kicky cute dress that I'm wearing today. I would have on a black skirt and some funky shoes and maybe some necklace. Like I would bring Catherine and quirky artistic Catherine, but I'd professional her up a little bit. So I think, but you don't want to turn yourself inside out for sure. If I showed up wearing a navy blue suit, I would be the worst speaker you booked that day, because it would, as you said, flatline your energy or my energy. So, you know, I'd have some bright lipstick because that's me. I would have, you know, I would bring Catherine, but I would bring the less colorful language of Catherine because it's not appropriate to use certain words in formal company, so I wouldn't do it. But you know, if I am a pirate on the side, that's me.
And I agree 100% with what you're saying. I think it's like if you were a lawyer and you were going into a courtroom, you're not going to wear some crazy.
You're not going to have jeans with the knee, like
right,
oh,
right. But there's still ways within that, in that environment, for you to, you know, continue to be true to who you are.
Absolutely. If you're smart and sharp, or if you're the thoughtful, considered voice of reason, I mean, you get to bring the key components of who you really are to work. You know, it might not be exactly the version your friend or partners see, but you know, it'll still be, it shouldn't be out of integrity. That's one of the sense checks with personal branding and social media. I have, you know, 13 years of content out there, and people want to have this conversation with me to see that I am who I put out there. And inevitably someone says, oh, you're exactly like your social media stuff. Yeah, it's me. If you like it or you don't, it's fine. You know, I'm just not the coach for you, and I'll refer them to someone nice like you.
Well, but if you are being authentic and have always been authentic, it's not going to matter what role you've played, what situation you've been in, who you've been around. They're going to see that there's a common energy that exists in all of those situations, even though you might be showing, even though every situation is different. If you're being authentic, even if you are the lawyer in the courtroom, you can still be yourself in all of those situations, if you know, within parameters that you have to follow or are culturally accepted.
Okay, there we go. That's what I wanted to add in there, because I think that's a source of confusion for a lot of people, especially if they have, you know, some, I don't know, something that they feel is unusual or might not be accepted. All right. Let's talk about some of the signs that you see when people are shrinking. They may or may not notice that you're doing it, but I know that you have a radar. You're like, oh, shrinking, because you spend a lot of time, you know, in Zoom land, as we all have over the last 2 years, and monitoring chat. You have some good examples of how, especially women, show up and shrink in situations. Can you share?
Sure. Shrinking really, very simply, is the act of giving your power away. It's that moment where in our heads, before we say anything or do anything, we're like, is this going to make me look difficult, too bossy, too strong, too much, too anything, really?
You're talking about my 30s here. Every word that was used about me in my 30s.
Well, what's so funny is that anytime I've spoken about shrinking to women, I just say I'm going to talk about shrinking, and every woman knows exactly what I'm talking about in that moment, because we've all done it. so in Zoom rooms, some of the things that I've seen is if someone is late, they'll say, I'm so sorry I'm late, or I'm sorry to bother you. There's an apologetic communication style or a passive communication style. A woman might say, I just want to add this point. They use the word just. Basically, anything that we say, if you write a sentence in an email and you say, I'm just following up, just take the word out. You can take that word out everywhere. So that's what, you know, and you look at it and you go, well, that sounds kind of pushy. Instead of, you know, I am following up. Oh, that sounds wrong. No, it's not. That's how a man would write to you. He wouldn't say, I'm just following up.
I'm sorry to bother you during this difficult
Yes.
time.
Yes, exactly. So apologetic communication style, passive communication style, body language is huge. It gives a lot of way. The example I was saying to you before of tell me about your superpower, and you immediately see women's shoulders roll in or they lean back in
I
their
don't have anything to bring to the party. Nobody should pay me. I'm going home now.
Exactly. And we're doing this unconsciously. We're not even aware, but there's a belief that is driving our body language, how we feel, how we're speaking, the words that we choose. And, you know, often watching ourselves on camera it's a funny thing, because you realize, oh, look at me, I'm doing that. And I know, and it's, you can be mad at yourself for doing it, but it's like, look at that, I'm doing it, I'm gonna stop that.
Sure, noticing is the first step. If you don't know you're doing it, you're not going to be fixing it.
Exactly. So having the self-awareness to say, you know, I'm not speaking up in meetings. I have these ideas. I want to talk about them. And then you get into the actual situation. And instead you have this, you know, these two voices in your head going, do it, do it, do it. And the other voice is going, no, 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 you can't. You're going to look stupid, or somebody else isn't going to be happy that you said it, or the words that you're going to choose aren't going to be well received.
It won't be perfect.
I have nothing of value to contribute here, even though you have.
I'm a total fraud and everybody's going to see it.
Yes. And this is happening all the time, especially.
I've been faking it for the last 20 years. Someone's going to figure it out.
Oh, that's a huge one that people say, right? I don't know how I got here. If people really knew who I was, they would be like, oh, she's not who she says she is. She's a fraud. It's a common problem.
Everybody raise their hand if they've ever had that one.
Yeah. all the time. So being able to recognize, like when you're shrinking, you're not feeling good. We don't feel good when we shrink, right? And being just aware.
I call it the bad dog thing. We go like this, bad dog.
Yeah. And we do it in so many ways. You know, if we might say, if I said to you, if you said to me, Susan, you know, what do you think about this? And I said, well, I agree with everybody else, or I'm not the person to talk to about this. I want to go and ask somebody else. Like
I think Sandra should chime in first. I'd love to hear what she says. You just throw the hot potato to somebody else.
Punt it, right? When we're just not willing to be ourselves, you know, and instead we give into pressure about, you know, everybody else is smarter than us. Somebody else has something better to say. And I don't.
So it's, what I'm hearing you say is there's some negative self-talk, some limiting beliefs, maybe some personal experience where speaking up didn't work out that well for you. There's maybe some fear, some perfectionism, some imposter syndrome. That's a pretty powerful cocktail. As I name all those out. So what do we do? Like, how do we get past this?
Well, I think it's what you said earlier. First off, it's self-awareness and having the willingness to say, okay, I'm going to unpack all of these and not get super judgy, because all women at one point in time have dealt with this. One of the one of the things I did a workshop for a women's networking organization on this very topic. And I had somebody reach out to me afterwards who said, I want to let you know what happened in our breakout room. And one of the women in the breakout room said, you know, all women do this. This is just something that we all do. And if I speak up, like I risk more. I have more to lose than if I just continue to just, you know, go up and down and just be the way it's, you know, just be the person I've always been. I have so much more left to lose. But at the same time, this woman was sharing how unhappy she is. And if you're willing to just take a look and say, okay, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different way of thinking about this. Instead of just accepting that this is how I've always had to show up, what if I looked at it differently? One of the things that I always say is like, our belief system is a set of lenses that we put on. So you and I are talking, I'm looking at your beautiful face, I see your background, your glasses, your dress. And if I was to put on my reading glasses, for instance, we're still having the same conversation, but you look a little different. So does your room. And so if we're willing to say, okay, I'm going to put on the lens that I'm empowered, that people value what I have to say, all of a sudden the room looks different. Our opportunities look different. And we can choose to do that at any time, but we have to give ourselves permission to actually say, I'm going to put on a new set of lenses. I'm going to choose to look at this differently. I'm going to choose to look at what I think and be willing to say, okay, is this really true? Am I willing to change this belief? And saying all of this, it sounds like it should be easy, and it's not, but it can be done if you're willing to open up each and examine all of the areas that you've just outlined. Right? It's giving ourselves permission to do that. And once we're willing to give ourselves permission, we can start to lean into different things that we didn't think were possible for us.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you clearly outlined the beginning, the identification, the permission, the squishiness of the change, that it's going to be uncomfortable. I want to add the potential payoff. The potential payoff might be asking for that raise, asking for that promotion, signing up for that special project that's a little too much exposure to the executive team, for good or for bad, or that's, you know, a little bit of a stretch for you where you would learn and grow, but is a little uncomfortable. Like there is some discomfort, but there's potentially payoff of having a better job, being seen in a different way, developing thought leadership, or, you know, a million payoffs to this. And we're not in any way, I know Susan, is not sunshine and roses. This is not comfortable, folks. It is not a comfortable process, but it's very doable. I think that's what you're trying to tell people, is you can change this.
It is very doable. And, you know, I've heard a lot of people say that, you know, it can be risky. Yes, but the reward is huge. And, you know, change is never comfortable. And when people look back on their accomplishments, often people look back to the hard things that they've done and they go, I am so proud that I was willing to put myself through that uncomfortable situation, because I came out of it and I was a different person. I was more grounded. I was more myself. I realized my strengths.
I was happier in my own skin. I was showing up better for my partner. You know, I'm in the process of writing this book, Evolving, This Isn't Working, Evolving the Way We Work to Decrease Stress, Anxiety, and Depression. And shrinking and not showing up as yourself would be a big contributor to anxiety and depression, because you would feel that you were stopping your own forward progress, or that you didn't deserve to be seen differently, or to ask for that promotion, or to talk about that project, or to ask the difficult question or make the difficult idea. And when you're not doing that external stuff, you can start channeling this energy internally, and it turns into migraines and stomach problems, not sleeping well, Sunday night anxiety, where you're just like, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're like, I have to go to work tomorrow. And I know none of you have ever experienced any of that, but I know that you've had some experience coaching people around this. What would you add to the not doing it? Like a power, we need something to pull us forward. We also need something to push us forward. So that's kind of the push, because I don't want to feel like that. I don't like who I am. I don't like how I feel. I don't like that I'm snapping at my kids. I don't like that I'm not, connecting with my partner, because that's what happens when you're not feeling good about yourself and your work. We spend 10 hours a day at work, or a lot of us do, maybe more.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to do with my clients is I do a visualization about them feeling what it's like to be their future self, who they would like to be. And I'm not going to get into all of the details about the visualization, but what ends up happening is the person gets to experience who it is that they really desire to be. If they could be anybody that they wanted to be, if they could have any role, if, it's like a no holds barred, you could be anybody that you want. And to have, when they have the opportunity to be in that energy, what that allows them to do is, and it's what I say, it's like, that's pure energy. That's already a part of you. It already exists. It's not a fake it till you make it. You've experienced it. And if that wasn't already readily available to you and in you, you wouldn't have had that experience. And when people realize that, okay, it's there, I just have to give myself the permission to tap into that and be like, what would my future self do in this situation? Well, she would raise her hand and say, I have something to say about that. That's what she would do. And so being able to identify who is it that we want to be and tap into that energy every day, because it already exists from us, we can choose to lead from that energy. And again, this is not a quick fix necessarily, but it shows us that this confidence that we seek, this badassery that a lot of women want to have, right, it's already there.
Nice.
It's already there. So giving ourselves permission to dream bigger and allow ourselves to lead from that energy, it's a game changer. And once you realize, it's like, oh, it is part of me already. I just have to allow myself to connect to it and lead with it. It makes things a lot more fun, and it can be less scary. It's not someone that we have to step into. It's someone that we have to allow to grow, to really flourish within us.
So it's a belief, and it's letting it sink in. It's embracing the emotional juiciness of it. Like when you're dreaming about a vacation, going to the Greek islands, I'm seeing the houses on the hills with the whitewash. It's just, like, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about that. If you wanted to be, for instance, if you wanted to be somebody who owned their own company, it was a seven-figure business. You were traveling the world speaking, and you were empowering women and doing all these workshops. This sounds a lot like what I would like to.
I want to be Mel Robbins. Just put Mel Robbins.
Okay, I almost said that. I almost said that just now about.
I know you and I are both big fans. Hi, Mel.
Yeah, big fans. If you were that person now, right, the decisions you make.
Oh, yeah. You know what you might do, Susan? You might start a video podcast series with your esteemed colleague. You might
exactly.
do that.
But exactly, you would do that because you're making decisions from that person's energy, that person's knowledge and experience. You're not making the decision based on how small you feel today. And it's a complete 180. If you woke up and you looked in the mirror and you were like, yeah, I own a 7-figure business and I'm traveling all over the world, how you approach your work, how you show up that day will be completely different than if you're, I don't have a job, I don't have anything to do, what am I going to do? The energy is different, how you show up, the choices you make, everything is different. And that is available to us now, even though that might not be your situation. You can still act from that energy, and that energy is still real. It is not fake it till you make it, and you are showing up powerfully for yourself and then ultimately for others.
Beautiful. Mic drop. I'm leaving it there. Susan Eckstein, thank you so much for sharing your magic. There were some big talking points. Don't shrink, folks. You're cheating yourself, and you're cheating the people who work with you, and you're cheating your partner, your kids, your family, everything. Don't cheat yourself. Be you.
Be you and take up space. Take up space.
All 5'2" of me. All right. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Catherine.
All right.